Thank you for coming tonight. Let's begin with a word of prayer and we'll let Ronnie get started. Father, we thank you for these last few nights have been so informative and helpful. And even though my wife says, well, you know all this stuff, it's filled in a bunch of blanks for me. And I really appreciate that, God. And I just pray that Ronnie and Tali will be as blessed to being with us as we are to have them here. So be with us tonight, Lord. Help us to focus our minds and to absorb the information and restore the sponginess to our brains and help us to benefit, Lord, just from all this tremendous research and work Ronnie's done. We thank you for it, Lord. Bless him. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I'm pleased to see that many people show interest in the topic I'm sharing. And you always wonder how many people are going to show up for the next session and the next one. It's encouraging. You need to understand the worst that can happen is that nobody really cares or interested. And when nobody cares or interested, you understand that it's very, very difficult to be optimistic when people don't show any interest in the thing that I'm sharing, which I believe are important to many people on the planet, especially to friends of Israel. I believe that the whole Christian world should be interested in what happens in the land of Israel. So I'm glad for the opportunity. Thank you, Pastor Ken, once again. Very seldom I have a chance to develop a whole seminar of 8 sessions to speak about that. Usually I go for an evening. You try to do that in one evening, huh? And I feel so bad because you know that there's so much more to share, and how can people possibly understand what I'm saying? So it's a blessing for me as well to be able to go deeper to understand the whole story. Well, this is the session number 4, and the last that we are going to have. We have 2 hours as always. We'll break around 7 o'clock for 10 minutes. And let me just remind you very briefly what was it that we covered yesterday. Yesterday, we spoke about the aftermath of the War of Israel's independence. We spoke about the devastation situation for the Palestinians that were hoping maybe to have a state. The hopes were crushed by the Jordanians who took part of the land allocated to them and by the Egyptians. And basically the idea of a Palestinian state would cease to exist because the land was taken by the Egyptians, by the Jordanians. We spoke about the way that they were treated in the refugee camp by the countries that basically invited them to come and take shelter, not treating them right, to say the least, without any human rights, without any civil rights, but they created a certain atmosphere, a certain national sentiment by giving them the weapons and the training to carry on the struggle against Israel. And then we spoke about the 6-day war, the turning point, winning a major war, not knowing that we gave the Palestinians a chance once again to become a nation. I did mention yesterday that the best thing that ever happened to them was Israel's victory in the war of 1967, freeing them in many ways from the oppression of Jordan and of Egypt, and once again thinking about the national existence. And Israel was willing to engage in some kind of negotiations, but yet they chose to get the world's attention, the Palestinians, not by peaceful negotiations, but by a way of terror to get the world's attention. They did. Arafat was invited to the United Nations, and then we kind of jump forward to speak about the Israeli-Egyptian peace accord, and that's how we brought yesterday to conclusion. President Sadat is visiting the Knesset in Jerusalem the 19th of November 1977, delivers the message, and that starts a peace process that will end with a peace treaty between the two countries. And we were positive that since Egypt is leading the Arab world, that will be the breakthrough and all the others will follow. Some did, but it will take some time. During the negotiations, I did mention that yesterday as well, President Sadat is asking Menachem Begin, Mr. Prime Minister, we have an issue with people called the Palestinians. Is there something we can do together to try to help their case? What is Israel willing to offer? And Menachem Begin, maybe the most hardliner among all Israeli prime ministers, said Israel will be in favor of creating an autonomy for the Palestinians. It wasn't statehood. It wasn't full sovereignty, it was an autonomy. We'll take it a step at a time, and we'll see if they can deliver. We do want to live in peace. They do deserve to have their own semi-freedom. Let's see if that can work. So Israel was the one that responded for the first time to the need of people that wanted to be a nation. And I have to say that over and over again. The Arab countries were not in favor of it. Because for the Arab countries, the West Bank that Israel took from Jordan was Jordanian territory. If you proclaim officially the land may be Palestinian, you're defeating the purpose of the Arab League because Jordan will not agree. And if Jordan sees this as betrayal, so will be other people. Nobody in the Arab world was willing to consider that there is a people called Palestinians, let alone they have a right to a land. And while negotiating, Begin is telling Sadat, Mr. President, we're going to pull out from all of Sinai. It's going to be a land for peace formula. Egypt was also occupying Gaza. Take Gaza with you as part of the peace plan. Sadat smiled bitterly and told Menachem Begin, Mr. Prime Minister, I don't want Gaza. You stick with Gaza. He knew what he was talking about. So when the peace accord was completed, Israel pulled out from the Sinai Peninsula. It took about 20 years and a half. It took a while. But Gaza stayed now in the hands of Israel because Egypt did not want Gaza back. And that begins to clarify what will be in the future the piece of property on the negotiation table. If Egypt doesn't want Gaza, and Israel has no claims for Gaza either, maybe Gaza should be a homeland for Palestinians. That was step number one. Fasting forward to 1988. In 1988, King Hussein of Jordan makes a shocking statement. 15th of October 1988, and he says, my grandfather, King Abdullah, officially annexed the West Bank to Jordan. That was a mistake. Jordan relinquishes any demand for the West Bank. Interesting. So now we have, once again, going back to 1947, when nobody wants the Gaza Strip, Jordan is not interested in the West Bank, and maybe something can be done for a future peace between the Palestinian people, not known as people yet, and the State of Israel. So these two decisions made by the President of Egypt and the King of Jordan will open the way a little later on with Israeli initiative to try to create a peace process vis-a-vis the Palestinians. That will happen in a few years. We are not there yet. Yesterday, we ended, therefore, with the Israeli-Egyptian peace plan, but I do want to go back to what happens meanwhile in Lebanon, because I did mention to you that the PLO in 1970, after crushed by the King of Jordan, the Egyptian president gets involved. Lebanon is willing to host the PLO on their territory. They create a state within a state. Constantly, barrage of rockets flies into Israel, crossing over, taking hostages, devastating our communities. It was indeed a war zone until 1982. In 1982, we decided that enough is enough. And for the first time, the IDF is openly engaged in full-scale war with the PLO and their supporters when Syria is heavily deployed in Lebanese territory as well. This will be called Peace for Galilee Operation, or the First Lebanese War. There was a second one, and there's a third one, and who knows how many wars will take place in Lebanon, unfortunately. That was the beginning. The PLO was not a match for the Israeli army, you do understand that. And very quickly, we made it all the way to Beirut, where were the headquarters of the PLO. Arafat finds himself surrounded by the Israeli army, and we decided that we want him to leave the area. Tunisia will be now the country that will host the Palestinians, at least for a few years. So this operation, basically the PLO has no presence on Israel's borders anymore. It was an issue when they were in Jordan, it was an issue in Lebanon. The whole plan was, the PLO is not presenting a threat anymore on our borders, but meanwhile among the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, something is cooking, and that's going to be the next thing that we are going to confront. So Arafat finds himself in Beirut. He has to leave the area, and let's watch this short video with your permission.
If this was a sad day for Yasser Arafat, he wasn't going to let it show. Before leaving, he went to say his farewells to his most valued friends, and the people of West Beirut came to say goodbye to him. The first call was on Walid Jumblat, the leader of the left-wing Muslims in Beirut who'd supported him since he brought the PLO headquarters to the city in 1970. Mr. Arafat declared that the siege of Beirut had brought about a new dawn on the Arab scene and a united resistance against the Israelis. There was another enthusiastic reception at the office of the Lebanese Prime Minister, Shafiq al-Wazan, who played a key part in the ceasefire and evacuation.
Well, Shafiq al-Wazan will be murdered later on by Palestinians. I'm stopping it right here. But the point is that Arafat and the whole PLO will be irrelevant in the next few years in the way the things develop between the State of Israel and the Palestinians. Some of you know the term intifada because it's becoming very famous recently when students are chanting intifada revolution. Intifada means an uprising. So when Israel is dealing with the PLO, something happens in the Palestinian territories in Gaza and the West Bank. Since the PLO was humiliated once again, the local Palestinians are resisting, but again, it's not really a full-scale confrontation. It starts always as an accident. It was a trigger. An Israeli vehicle ran into a group of Palestinian workers waiting for the lift to go back home. 7 were killed. It was a provocation. Israel did it on purpose. You murder Palestinians. There was an uprising, especially in the Gaza area. What Israel begins to do is to try to encourage some local leadership so they will grow from among the people, and we are going to, in a way, to support them. And they will be the future leaders of the Palestinians for potential negotiations because we do not want to talk to Arafat. Arafat is the bitter enemy. We want to develop a local leadership and negotiate with them. And at least for a while, it was a success. But for Arafat and his companions, it was a threat. If a new leadership is growing in the territories and Israel is going to negotiate with them, we are not relevant anymore. We are totally out of power. So every local leader among the Palestinians, for example, mayors of cities, the mayor of Gaza, Rashad Eshawah, a very important individual, Israel made him an offer. Are you willing to negotiate in behalf of the Palestinians in Gaza and see if you can find a future solution? Well, the man was murdered because if you present a threat to the PLO's authority, you will not live for too long. They want to be the leaders, although they're away in Tunisia. So this intifada was the first time that the population in Israel, started rethinking about this whole occupation. You need to understand, Israel is divided until the war in Gaza about 50-50 between two opinions. Do we want to compromise the land for peace with the Palestinians, or the land is ours and we're not going to compromise anything? It was indeed the main line that divided the population into two, and the first intifada was, in a way, a wake-up call. It's very unpleasant to see the Israeli army confronting kids with rocks or Molotov cocktails. We don't like to see that either. And therefore there was a shift in mind among most Israelis that were still captivated by the amazing victory of 1967. Finally, we are back home. That's the land God gave us. We should not be considering anybody else's needs. The Intifada, to be honest with you, from the Israeli side, is changing some of the mindset. We don't want to be occupiers. We need to find a solution. The question is, what will be the formula? Is it going to be peace for something? Or maybe not, because we tried this track of peace for something. It wasn't working. It worked with Egypt, but not with all those groups. But the mindset in Israel is shifting, and it's important. The PLO is not part of any of what happens in the land. In fact, among the local Palestinians, there was much resistance against the PLO. These guys live in fancy hotels in Tunisia. They are very corrupt, so all the donations given to the Palestinian people do not go to the people, go to the leadership. And the locals in Palestine who suffer from Israel say, well, you send us basically to die for you. We don't want you as leaders. You set up, for example, just like today. Hamas's leadership is living in 5-star hotels in Qatar. They do not know what happens in the Gaza Strip. It was always the case. The leadership is not really leading the people, and people did not like to see that. If you want to be our leaders, you need to come to Gaza and lead us on the ground and suffer like we suffer. The PLO right now is taken as a unique elite of people that are not representing us. That would be the Palestinian, the local ones, and their approach. We spoke about that, but it's important to repeat that. In 1979, Anwar al-Sadat refuses to take Gaza. In 1988, King Hussein of Jordan says the West Bank is not mine. And finally, 2 pieces of property on the negotiation table. Nobody wants them. Israel is willing to compromise and negotiate. The question is, who will be a partner for such negotiations? Keep in mind, you can negotiate with somebody, but if the somebody was not officially elected by the people, can they deliver? Who decided that the PLO are the leaders? It wasn't a choice of the locals. So we always hesitated who represents the Palestinians, but there was a willingness in Israel to try to do something to bring that conflict to some kind of a peaceful ending. Meanwhile, something happens. A new group is being founded, and it will be called Hamas. Of course, you all know the name today. Hamas was founded in 1987-88. It is affiliated to the Muslim Brotherhood, and Hamas is based on religious Muslim agenda and not Palestinian national home. There was all the difference in the world in the last sentence that I just made. Because if you deal with the Palestine Liberation Organization, focus is on Palestine, on nation, on politics. Hamas basically are the initial of the Muslim movement, all right? Which means now the agenda is not national, the agenda becomes religious. And by the way, we helped creating Hamas because we thought that Hamas is going to undermine the position of the PLO, a classical divide and conquer. You know what? Until this very day, Israel supported Hamas for quite a long time, not knowing what the real plan is. We send money to Hamas because as long as the Palestinians are divided, Israel cannot negotiate with anybody because who represents the Palestinians? So the pressure is not on Israel. So we had an interest to create that rift, and we helped founding Hamas as well. And Hamas was a group that was involved in charity, education, all the services that the Palestinian Authority could not basically provide. Hamas stepped in to provide the services just to attract more people to come to the schools and mosques and indoctrinate them to be warriors for Islam. It all happened under our noses, not understanding their motivation. Please read the following statement, and that's not just an idea, that's what Hamas believes in. You can find tons of information, they don't hide their intention, they tell you exactly what the plan is. Number one, to get rid from all the Jews in the world. The problem is Judaism and not Zionism. The problem is not the Jews in Israel, but the Jews worldwide. That's what Hamas is all about. And by the way, in polls taken during the war in Gaza, after Hamas led to this catastrophe, still there is a vast majority of people that are supporting Hamas. Now you explain to me the logic behind that. This movement led them to a total destruction, and still, most people are supporting Hamas. And we said it many times. The agenda is not a Palestinian state. The agenda, the Jews should not have any presence in the area. So now we have a broader agenda, not limited nationally, but a Muslim agenda. Hamas is going to be a key player in the area. The founder was a man that spent some time in Israeli jails, Ahmed al-Yassin. He was the man behind the beginning of it, well connected to the Muslim Brotherhood organization in Egypt. Meanwhile, by the way, in 1981, Sadat, the president of Egypt, was murdered October 6th of 1981 by the Muslim Brotherhood. How dare you make peace with the Jews? Not with Israel, with the Jews. The Muslim Brotherhoods are outlawed in every Arab country. Hamas is an illegal movement in every Arab country. Where can you walk and wave the banners of Hamas proudly? All over Europe, in America, in Australia. You dare to do that in Egypt, or in Syria, or in Lebanon? No way, because they know what Hamas is all about. From the Israeli side, it was something that looked like it's a clever move. By the way, it will be a shock to you, Israel was helping to fund Hezbollah in Lebanon. Hezbollah in Lebanon, in a way, was founded by Israel because we wanted to undermine the position of the PLO. And how do you do that? By creating another group, and they will fight against each other. What a big mistake it was now, you know. Each time we try to interfere, to create regime changes in countries in the area, the end result is much worse than the place that we started from. And it happens over, we just don't learn. We do not learn a very simple lesson. So it happened in Lebanon, it happened among the Palestinians. Whenever we try to do something that will serve us, Usually it ends with a total disaster. Hezbollah and Hamas are two examples. So when Hamas is going to take over the West Bank, we're not there yet, but just to give you an idea what Hamas is all about. Well, that's what Hamas is all about. We speak about a group which is loyal to the Muslim cause. All the resources of Gaza or the Palestinian people are basically dedicated to kill the Jews in Israel and to spread global intifada everywhere. You read the charter of Hamas, it hardly speaks about the Palestinian state. It speaks about a global jihad. That's what Hamas is all about. And I think that you know that because you see quite a lot of information about them. Executions in the streets, everything that anybody who dares to oppose them usually ends up in a bullet in your head, but that will happen only in a few years. So far, they were born, but they're not in power yet. But we are supporting something that we do not fully understand how these things are going to evolve. Just, some of the information over there about Hamas. Money is coming from Iran. Money is coming from Qatar. Libya just collapsed and lots of weapons are flowing from Egypt into the Gaza Strip, and Hamas seizes most of it. We speak about a very militant group that's going to conquer and take over the whole of the Gaza Strip. Let me just read to you, or you read for yourselves, two artifacts from the charter of Hamas, and you can go and Google, it's all there. That's what Hamas believes in, and that's what Hamas is all about. I do want to remind you, because I presented it yesterday, the proclamation of independence of the State of Israel. It speaks about peace. It speaks about cooperation. It speaks about equal rights to everybody. And read this. And it's not just a document. It's a document that it's like a guidebook. That's how Hamas operates. Or the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, any other place. Another one. So you speak about negotiations. You speak about finding a solution. Will you tell me, how do you negotiate with this? And it's not just theoretical. That's how they operate. That's what they believe in. I'm staying with Hamas for a while, once again, to introduce that group for you, although they are not in complete control yet of the Gaza area, but they will in a few years. All right, so Hamas basically is exploiting the population in Gaza. Everything that Gaza has is dedicated to promote one agenda, the war against Israel. Schools, clinics, they start digging tunnels. Oh, by the way, it's all refugee camp. And who is running the camps? The UN. So under the auspice of the United Nations, a body that's supposed to be neutral, right? A monster is growing using those UN facilities, including many employees of the UN are Hamas members, as was proven in the last war. So you take an advantage of the bitterness of the locals who are angry at their own leadership that betrayed them and went to Tunisia, and you simply fully exploit those sentiments in order to recruit people on your side. And if the education in the schools of the PLO are not good, Hamas offers better education and a free lunch to everybody. Where will you send your kid? This place or the other place? You don't understand how do you recruit people and how do you indoctrinate people simply by giving them services and opportunities that nobody else is giving them. So all that idea behind Hamas is going to meet us in a few years, but the group is growing. The group is getting more influential, stronger. Iran understands these guys can help us, just like Hezbollah in Lebanon. They need our support. We're going to finance them. Iran will be the patron of Hamas. Now that's strange because Iran are Shiites and Hamas are Sunnis. And these two groups hate each other. They will only come together when Israel is a common enemy. But Iran is willing to support Hamas, and that will be a new situation in the area. All of our attention went to the PLO. The PLO is not in the area anymore. Saddam Hussein is making voices about the destruction of Israel. All the attention goes now to Iraq. Something was growing under our noses that we did not fully notice and fully understand, not for the first time and not for the last time. Meanwhile, elections in Israel, a new government was elected. Yitzhak Rabin is now the new prime minister. And secretly, Israeli diplomats are trying to connect Palestinian diplomats and see if we can do something now having the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Let's see if we can work some kind of a deal. They start meeting secretly in Oslo, the Norwegian capital. And after they make progress, they ask President Clinton to move everything to Washington to be more formal. And after a few months of negotiations, a new agreement. For the first time ever, Israel and the Palestinians are signing an agreement. Who is going to sign in behalf of the Palestinians? Who is the leader? Who will represent the Palestinian people? I told you earlier, they were not elected by anybody. Nobody voted for them. But for Israel, that was very convenient. There was a group of people who are in Tunisia. They are completely irrelevant. They are desperate to come back to the area to take the position, so they are a bit more flexible and be more able to compromise. Let's give them that position. Israel made Arafat a leader. Israel made the PLO the ruling power because in Tunisia, you're not that relevant. So when Israel decides we want to try to solve the problem, the question was negotiating with whom? With the PLO. And the PLO does not represent the Palestinian people, but you do not negotiate to Hamas because they don't want to negotiate with you. So we're calling Arafat and his companions, and we start negotiating. Here is a letter that Yitzhak Rabin actually was receiving from Yasser Arafat. That was step number one, that the Palestinians are recognizing the right of Israel. By the way, he doesn't represent the Palestinians. But for us, that was easy. Yitzhak Rabin is answering on his own side, also a letter. Now, the state of Israel officially recognizes the PLO as the legitimate leader of the Palestinians, something the Palestinians did not accept. And we start negotiations. When Rabin makes this offer, it comes like a shock because many in Israel were very much against any kind of negotiations. We speak about years of terror. We almost speak about we give up and we succumb to terror. We should not agree to any peaceful negotiation. We should crush them. But there is a majority that wants to try the track of peace. And Rabin is addressing the people and tell them, as a leader, maybe the most difficult decision I had to make. We do want to work together for peace, for the best interests of future generations. We are going to give it a shot. Arafat addressed his people in Arabic. It's important. I'm not sure that you're going to study Arabic, but try to get a literal translation of messages in Arabic to English. Because the translations are not really revealing the true meaning of those messages. But that is the way that Arafat approached his people. Step number one, we are going to use Israel's weakness, and their compassionate approach will take whatever they offer. We are not giving up the struggle. It will carry on. On our side, well, of course, he has the opposition that he has to please. That's why the tone is so militant. He doesn't mean that. We're going to be partners because it's going to help everybody. So what were the reasons to go to what will be called the Oslo Accord? On the Israeli side, there was a real debate within Israel. Should we occupy another nation? Occupation may lead to corruption. We want to find a solution. Demographic issue is becoming an issue. You see, Israel is a democracy, but the population grows. And the population that grows is not the one that wants to see Israel as a secular democracy. The ultra-Orthodox plus Arabs are growing much faster than all the others. And in about 20, 30 years, unless something is done, we will lose our country simply by demographics. And since there is a lot of mingling of Palestinians in the territories and the state of Israel, this whole process may be expedited because Palestinian women will marry Israeli Arabs. It's legal. Israeli women will marry Palestinian men and they will join them into Israel. We're going to lose the country by demographics. Unless we come to some peaceful conclusion, these were the reasons on the Israeli side why to go to this idea. And also, we had enough of wars, we want to try to live in peace. What was the motivation of the Palestinians? Well, again, the PLO. Number one, the USSR just collapsed. They lost the biggest supporter. And therefore, if Israel offers something, let's take it now. We do know that in the territories, an alternative leadership is growing. Israel may make them an offer. So far they didn't because we murdered all potential negotiators. Before it's too late, let's take the offer. So both parties had a reason to make some progress and to take the offer. Oh yes, the Gulf War. Guess who the Palestinians supported during the Gulf War? Saddam Hussein, obviously. So you lose the support of the West, because if you support Saddam Hussein, people will say, well, why do they need a state? If these are the decisions they're going to make, we don't support such a state anymore. It was indeed maybe the weakest point of the Palestinians everywhere, or the PLO. Israel makes an offer, we are going to take it, see if it works. I have to say, I know that I will sound biased now, but I can prove that. Israel came to the negotiation table with clean hands. We do want to find a solution. Based on the way things have developed in Arafat's speech, they came to the table not with clean hands. For them, it was step number one, to the utter destruction of Israel. So whatever you're going to sign, we should have anticipated that, they're not going to keep. But only 30-something years ago, we were quite naive, not fully understanding the mindset, not fully understanding the zeal of the other side. We tried still to focus on the national issue and not the religious one. It's a mistake. We paid for it. One thing leads to another, and the leaders are meeting in the White House, and they produce what will be called the Oslo Accords, or the peace plan between Israel and the Palestinians. It speaks about an autonomy, not about a state. How much land is given to the Palestinians in return, it's not very clear. But the idea was, we're going to hand over the big cities, Bethlehem and Hebron and Jericho and Jenin, who are in the West Bank in Palestinian hands, and you start there. You'll have enclaves. You start governing yourself. We're going to help you. You'll take care about education and housing and sewage and everything that you need, and see if you deliver, if it's going to work. We'll pull out for more land, give you more, everything for peace. Don't even try to understand the following map, it's so complicated. But that was the idea. You see the West Bank on the right-hand side, you see Gaza in the lower left-hand side, and you do see the color code over there that I hope that some of you can read. That was the beginning. So Israel is going to pull out its forces and going to hand over some places to the Palestinians. There will be an official body that will be called the Palestinian Autonomy. It will have a parliament, it will have a government, it will have a judiciary, it will be something like a democracy-like entity. We'll take it a step at a time. We'll give it 5 years. And in these 5 years, if we see that you deliver, we'll pull out from more land, give it to you. By the time we complete the whole process, and numbers are not mentioned, but the idea was most of the West Bank will be a Palestinian autonomy. State wasn't even brought up yet. And so will be Gaza. And if we have any issues, we're going to act like civilized people. We go to Starbucks, we order some coffee, some cheesecake, we'll talk. It's an agreement. They signed the agreement. Now, we were hoping that it's going to work because it makes a lot of sense. It was supposed to work. Unfortunately, it didn't, and we should have anticipated that from the very beginning. One thing, for example, is the instigation in the media. They have, and this is the 90s, all right? 90s. We don't have yet TikTok, etc. We have schools and newspapers and radio. The messages are horrible. You read the textbooks even today of people in Gaza, the kids. Here is a question, all right? We speak about math. Abdullah's father killed 10 Jews today. His brave uncle killed 15 Jews yesterday. How many Jews were killed by the brave Palestinian family? I kid you not. It's accessible. You read, all right? Study books or whatever, curriculum in Gaza. Everything happens under UNRWA, under the UN, under the money that you people send them to educate the kids in such a way. Because UNRWA doesn't have a policy. They're using the curriculum of the country that hosts them, and it was Egypt. What do you think the Egyptians are sharing with the kids about Israel? If you educate a generation in such a way, what do you expect? It's all about education. But at the beginning of it, we thought it could work. Well, we were quite naive, one has to say. Officially, the Palestinian Authority was founded in July 1st of 1994. Show in a minute how Arafat is coming basically to Gaza and is welcomed like a hero. The man did not visit Gaza since 1967. He doesn't know the people. People don't know him. He's a complete stranger. He brings a bunch of people with him that do not understand the mentality, don't even speak the Palestinian dialect. They speak Tunisian, they speak Lebanese, they're foreigners. And these are the people that Israel basically invited to be the leader of the Palestinians. These nuances are critical to understand, but we did not. We made those mistakes time after time. So now we do have the Palestinian autonomy, and it has started working in a way, but in a very short time. After they take control over parts of Gaza, the first rockets are flying from Palestine-occupied Gaza into Israel's territory. Israel built settlements in the Gaza Strip. I'm not talking about the settlements now. Easy target. Easy target. So whenever there is a road, a car that goes from Israel proper, that goes from those community settlements, you can fire at the car on the main road, easy targets. So there was not a peace, not even for one day. It started immediately after Arafat came to Gaza. Let me show you the welcome that he received in Gaza. Complete chaos. And once again, a Palestinian hero, that's what he was, but a complete foreigner. And people did not understand, not the language and not the leadership, but that was the beginning of the Palestinian autonomy. As he was driving into Gaza with his car, on the trunk of the car, and nobody was supposed to check, right? The whole world media is there. He flies through the Israeli checkpoint with about 40 AK-47s in the trunk, and two wanted mass murderers ducking on the back seat. All right? They knew that we're not going to stop them when the whole world media is over there. That was the beginning of it. So speaking about honest intentions and speaking about a real will from both sides, that was not the case, unfortunately. But now there is a PA, and Arafat is in Gaza. And let me show you the map once again. You do see how this used to look like. And since we made a commitment, we started implementing the Oslo Accords. It was officially signed in Washington, D.C., the 13th of September 1993. Israel is pulling out from Jericho. We pull out from Bethlehem. We pull out from Hebron and give it to the Palestinians. That was the agreement. Did we get peace in return? You must be kidding. Now we created safe places for Palestinians to flee to because we respected the agreement. Those enclaves, Israel did not have a hot pursuit, so to speak, to try to go after somebody that committed an act of terror on our side and was able to flee. We respected their sovereignty. In one occasion, in the cafeteria in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, a bomb blasted, killing 7 students. By the time it happened, the man that left the bag with the bomb was in his house in Jericho. Now, we have good intelligence. We can find out. And we called up Mr. Arafat and said, listen, man, this terrorist is in Jericho. Here's the address. Here is the picture of him. You go and arrest him. The answer was, no, that will start a civil war. I cannot fight against my own people. We said, just a minute now. We made a deal. That was part of the deal. So instead of insisting that you keep the agreement, we decided, okay, maybe he has a point. He's still weak. He needs more training. He needs more weapons to control his own opposition. You know what we did? We gave them weapons. Weapons that were using against us because we made a deal. And we are partners because it makes sense. And things were getting worse and worse, as you understand. And just to show you, in a very short time, right after the PA was created, just a list of some of those horrible terror attacks that took place in the streets of Israel. And everything was done by a good buddy, Arafat. In fact, some was carried out by Hamas. And we told him, listen, Hamas is your problem. Hamas may be your opposition. You go and you fight them. Oh, that will start a civil war. I don't want to start a civil war. And even back then, we did not understand what was the end game. We thought that these are just the hardships of the beginning of it. We need to give it a chance. And we just ignored that. We lost more than 1,000 people. We call them the victims of peace. Do you understand that? Victims of peace. Because we made a deal. It's going to work. Well, wasn't really working. So once again, one bomb after the other. I do want to show just a little clip, and I promise I kind of covered the gross parts of it because it's not pleasant. It's a scene of a bomb, a bus that was blown up in the very heart of Jerusalem by Palestinian suicide terrorists. You wear the bomb in your pockets and you detonate it in the crowded places, etc. That was daily routine in Israel for 3 or 4 years. Losing hundreds of people to Palestinian terror after we made peace with them. And we still hope this has a chance. You will see in a minute people who are dressed, look like ultra-Orthodox rabbis. Well, when you come to such a scene, you're crawling on your floor to try to collect every piece of skin and every piece of blood to get it together to bury the whole person if possible, again for the end of the days and resurrection. It's a very important principle in Judaism. It was horrible. And we were hoping that maybe it will stop. It didn't stop. You know how pleasant that is to see a bus like that? People were scared to go out to the roads, and you send your child to school every day not knowing are they going to make it. And when the kids are going to school, and then you hear that something happened, you try to talk to them on the phone. But the system collapses. Everybody dies at the same minute. You understand your mindset before you hear from your son and daughter, Mom, Dad, I'm okay. It was a daily routine in the early 90s vis-a-vis people that we made peace with. So you do understand how things were not working. Things were getting worse and worse. And then we said, okay, this is not working. What are your demands? Let's take it a step further. And the demands were very simple. Israel is going to pull out to the borders of the 4th of June of 1967, which means all of the West Bank, all of Gaza, all the refugees will go back home, not going to happen. And of course, East Jerusalem will be the capital of a Palestinian state. Now the demand is statehood. And Israel said, well, we are going to consider that. A new Prime Minister, Ehud Barak, is invited by President Clinton, once again, his second term, to go to Washington. Arafat is invited as well. Israel presents an offer. No offer in the future will be more generous. 93% of the land called the West Bank and the Gaza Strip is given to the Palestinians for a state. Israel will consider pull out from East Jerusalem, giving Temple Mount to the Palestinian state, if they are kind enough, of being sarcastic, to give us the right to go to the Western Wall. And this job or this process will be done as quickly as possible. The refugees are not coming back to their ancient homes. If it was indeed their homes, they will be compensated by the state of Israel. This is the most generous offer that you can get. President Clinton was interviewed not that long ago, quite an old man by now, and he said, I can witness and testify. Israel offered the Palestinians more than they wanted, and they said no. And he said, which led me to the conclusion, what the Palestinians want is to destroy Israel. They don't want a state, they don't want sovereignty, they want one thing. State of Israel will cease to exist. So this offer was turned down even without making a counteroffer. You know how negotiations work. You present a plan, the other party presents a plan, you start negotiating, and you try to find the middle way. There wasn't even a counter-offer on the table. Arafat said no, went back to Ramallah, the capital of the Palestinians, and we woke up to a new situation, another intifada, which will be the second intifada uprising, when Ariel Sharon, the head of the opposition back then, was visiting Temple Mount. Now, Temple Mount, to remind you, is the holiest place for the Jewish people. And Jerusalem is the sovereign capital of a sovereign Jewish state. What's more obvious than Jewish leaders visiting Temple Mount? Well, for the Muslim world, it's a provocation. It's a declaration. Jewish officials should not visit Temple Mount because it's a disgrace to Islam. So that will be the reason for another intifada. That was the trigger. Let me show you how that looked like, because it's quite shocking, all right? Just a typical event on Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Look how well they keep the holy places. All these are Palestinian rioters. Everything is covered with dirt and filth and Molotov cocktails and rocks and stones. By the way, there are no stones on top of Temple Mount. If you see a stone, somebody brought it in its pockets. And Israel is granting freedom of religion. Anybody can come to pray and worship. Temple Mount became to be the focal point to all the unrest, right? Because Temple Mount is about religion and not about politics. That became to be almost like a daily routine, making Temple Mount the focal point of all the debates. That's how this intifada started. Israeli police officers tried to control the hundreds of thousands, sometimes masses, on the Muslim side, because if we tell them, listen, you cannot come to Temple Mount to worship anymore, you know how the world is going to respond. How dare you? How dare you not respect the Muslim faith? They have the right to go and pray. Well, yes, to pray, not to riot. Temple Mount became to be the battlefield, if you wish, of the Israeli police on one side and the Palestinians. Let me take you into the mosque. The mosque, a holy place, all right? That's how the local worshippers, Muslims, are treating the holy places. You are throwing Molotov cocktails inside the mosque. I wish that one will catch the whole building in fire. Who will be accused for that? Iran launched a ballistic missile 2 months ago. It fell about 1,000 feet away from Temple Mount. Just guess what will happen if that missile had hit the Dome of the Rock. Who will be accused? Your defense system is lousy. We'll launch it because we knew that you're going to intercept it. How dare you not intercept it? That's the logic. Well, a typical scene from the way that the Palestinians are respecting their holy places, all right? The third holy place to Islam is this building. You don't treat holy places in such a way. And there we have a confession that was made by a leader of the Palestinians about the circumstances. It wasn't the visit of Ariel Sharon. They just waited for the opportunity, the one in yellow over there. And Ariel Sharon's visit was the trigger. So once again, we have a wave of riots, another intifada, worse than the first one. But I do want to assure you that speaking about holy places, who protects them, who respects them, well, Rachel's tomb is in Bethlehem. Rachel's tomb is an Israeli enclave in Bethlehem, a place of worship. To get there, you go into a corridor with fortified concrete on both sides. The roof is covered with a netting so nobody can throw a Molotov cocktail, and you go to worship in such an environment. And then we have Joseph's tomb in Shechem. You try to get there because the agreement said the Jews are permitted to visit holy places. Most likely you're not coming back home alive. But you go to Temple Mount. Who protects Temple Mount? The Jewish state. All the Muslim sites in Israel are respected, protected, clean, accessible. Because the deal also said the people will be permitted to visit the holy places regardless where are they in safety. Well, only one part. One party is keeping that deal, and that's not the Palestinian party. Listen to the words of Arafat when he speaks about the second intifada, okay? And that's exactly it. If you don't speak Arabic, you're missing part of the point. And officially, we're still partners. Officially, the Oslo Accords still prevail. Officially, we're still negotiating. And then you hear this. And then the Israeli Navy is intercepting in the Red Sea a ship full of weapons called the Santorini, which are on the way to Gaza. Gaza had a harbor. Gaza had an airport. And if that's not enough, another ship is intercepted by the Israeli Navy SEALs. Weapons of all kinds are purchased by the Palestinians, who are the peaceful partners, to go to Gaza, now in Palestinian hands, to carry on the war against Israel. It looks like it's not going to work, and the world is concerned. President Bush decides to get involved, and he presents a plan on the table. It will be called the Roadmap for Peace. And he said in his statement in June of 2002, it was always America's wish to see a two-state solution. With all due respect, it was not until that statement. America's position was always, we will help will facilitate, you talk, you get to a solution. Whatever is agreeable upon the two parties, we will support. Now, basically, the U.S. has a new policy, a two-state solution. That was the idea. The plan had a precondition. To implement the plan, the Palestinians have to stop this instigation, they have to come to the table, etc. It wasn't working. But Israel said yes to the plan because before the plan is being implemented, the Palestinians had to deliver, and they are not capable to, they don't want to, and if they don't keep their part, Israel is not under pressure. But until this very day, by the way, the official plan on the table, with all the war in Gaza, is the roadmap for peace that should lead to a two-state solution. And Israel begins to pull out some of its forces, and we build fences, and we build all kinds of electronic surveillances. Once you start protecting yourself, once you focus on defense, that's step number one to defeat. All right? And I'm saying it now, having the experience. If you build a fence, it's a sign of weakness. I want to be in a position that you don't dare to attack me, even without a fence. But once you build a fence, it's a sign of weakness. Our concern was we want to save lives. And therefore a fence is built, and this fence is still there. It's more or less on the 1967 line, all right? The land that was promised back then to the Palestinians. Fence is still there. We live about 300 yards away from that fence in a very unpleasant neighborhood right behind the fence called Tulkarem. There are 100,000 people there, and all they care about day and night is how to cut my throat. Not very pleasant to live in such a situation, but it's not my story. It's the whole country's story. So we do have the fence now heavily guarded, and we need to understand the response of leaders around the world. For example, Amr Moussa, who was a prime minister, and then the chairman or secretary general, that's the position. For example, the words of the president of the Palestinians, Arafat, died in 2005, Abbas replaced him. That's their position. And let's take it now to Turkey, Erdogan, the Sultan, okay, another unpleasant friend of Israel. That will be the new approach. And now keep in mind, they have an autonomy. It's a semi-state, recognized by countries, having resources. You're not dealing with sentiments, you're dealing with an organized power that we created that's working against us. I want to take a side track, and please work with me. Here is our main dilemma. Israel can easily, if you want to, annex the West Bank. We can conquer Gaza. Yes, we can. If we decide to annex the West Bank and Gaza to the state of Israel, we will be outnumbered in our own country. Because the population of Gaza, plus West Bank, plus Israeli Arabs, will be a majority. And we can do that. But if we're conquering this land and giving them equal rights, as we should, being a democracy, that will be the end of the state of Israel. If we want to annex the land without giving them any civil rights, that will be an apartheid state. Israel is not an apartheid state. And therefore the choices between a smaller Israel with a solid Jewish majority or a greater Israel with a Jewish minority, if you want to stay a democracy, leaves one option. Give up the land for peace, have your land with a majority of Jews solid in it. That was the choice. If you check with Israelis even today, we prefer to live in a democracy, even if the country is smaller, than to expand our borders, annex territory, not giving rights to people that we conquer and occupy. That will be an apartheid state. Israel is not an apartheid state. So negotiations and creating a smaller Israel with a solid majority is the preferred choice. I have to tell you that after November 7, 2023, the mindset is totally changing. But that was the mindset even back then. And since we wanted to prove to the world, all right, that we mean business, a new Prime Minister, Ariel Sharon, a very hardliner, is orchestrating a plan. Israel is going to pull out from the Gaza Strip. Unilaterally, not for negotiations, we are leaving the Gaza Strip. It's part of the roadmap that President Bush was interested in. The world thinks that if Israel gives up just a little more, that will appease the Palestinians. And we said, well, fine, let's put it to a test. it was a big challenge among Israelis. There was a lot of demonstrations. We were that close to a civil war because most people in Israel, most people, were not for the plan. And in democracy, usually majority usually ruled, not in this case. It was the government. It passed in the government. By the way, Netanyahu voted for it as well. I'm saying that because he's the biggest critic today of this whole plan. All right? Sharon was a traitor. You voted for it as well. It looked like the right thing to do, to take off the pressure from Israel. You want us to give up a little more, to appease the Palestinians, see how they respond? We'll take a chance. We'll do it. And therefore, the disengagement was that plan orchestrated by Mr. Sharon. Here is the map once again. Israel will pull out from all of Gaza, destroying 18 communities that we have built, exiling, evacuating 7,000 people, relocating them in Israel proper. So Gaza will be a Palestinian state. You want a two-state solution? Here is the beginning of it. Again, a lot of opposition, a lot of unrest in Israel. Many people did not like the idea, but since the decision was made and was passed in the parliament in a democratic way, it took shape in August and September of 2005. It's important to note that this was not negotiations. It was a decision made by Israel without arranging that with the Palestinians. And they will say, since we did not negotiate and you surprised us, of course it's not going to lead to peace. It's supposed to be negotiations. We pulled out. From September 11th of 2005, not a single Israeli is in Gaza. Not even one. When you see those banners, Free Gaza, I'm all for it. Free Gaza from whom? Free Gaza from Hamas. Israel is not engaged with Gaza in any way since 2005. Then you will say, yes, but Gaza is under a blockade, like a big concentration camp. How dare you? Well, the map is too small. But just by the red arrow over there, there is a little border of Gaza with Egypt. Maybe the Egyptians will supply Gaza with whatever Gaza needs. I mean, we are the bitter enemy. How dare you expect us to support Gaza with food and fuel and pharmaceutics and provide medical care? What about Egypt? You are the big brothers. There is a border of Gaza with Egypt that we do not control. Blockade? No. Because the Egyptians are clever. Just like Sadat said, I don't want Gaza back. The statement was, never, ever in the future will get involved in anything regarding Gaza. So now Israel is out. The Palestinians have like a place they can try to build their country. The Israeli army is not there. And that leads basically to the following, and we'll bring that hour to conclusion in just a minute. So when we speak about Free Gaza, you do understand the whole idea. Israel is not in Gaza since September 11th of 2005, which means that now the Palestinians can dig their tunnels freely. They can smuggle from Sinai everything they want into Gaza. And that's not food for the babies, that's rockets and TNT and ammunition and weapons. And we were hoping that the world would understand that since Israel pulled out, the pressure will be on the Palestinians. Israel did more than it was required. Guess what? No. So we have a new situation now. We were hoping that that would be a test case. If this is going to work, we'll move to step 2, the West Bank. It wasn't working to begin with. And to make things even worse, elections. The Palestinian people are going to vote. Condoleezza Rice was Secretary of State, and she was all for it because the US wanted to show the world that Arabs and democracy are not an oxymoron. Arabs can live in democracy, and the Palestinians will be the test case, will prove to the whole world that there can be an Arab democracy. Practically does not. And we warned her. We said, listen, if this is going to be free elections, as we understand free elections, Hamas will win. And if Hamas wins, that's a new ballgame. She said, nevertheless, so monitors, inspectors came from all around Europe. It was as kosher, forgive me, as legal elections as one can think. Things were done out in the open, using Western standards. There was some corruption, as always, some misunderstanding, as always, but it was as close as possible to free, clean elections among the Palestinians for the first time in the Arab world ever. And guess who won the elections? Well, Hamas won the elections big time. Hamas won 75% of the vote in the West Bank and in Gaza. The PLO was shocked, we not, but the world was shocked as well. People had spoken. So if you're voting for Hamas, you're voting for Hamas as a charter. You're voting for violence. You're voting for oppression. You're voting for everything against what the Western world believes in. But the people had spoken. And if you want the will of the people to prevail, that's the will of the people. It's tricky, because the mindset of the West will tell you people want to be free. People want to live in peace. People want the rights. If we give them a chance to vote, those principles will win, because it makes sense, because that's the Western mindset. We do not understand the mindset of the other party. We don't care about peace. We are willing to suffer as long as we make you suffer. How do you deal with that? A press conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, two officials are talking. There's a microphone which is open. They don't know it's open. And the Israeli one tells the Palestinian, listen, we made such a generous offer. How come you refuse to take it? You had nothing, and we offer 100%. And the man says, you don't know us. You don't know us. We are willing to suffer, but we make you suffer as well. Okay. A new ballgame, huh? A total new mindset. So Israel is allowing those elections, so to speak. Hamas wins. The PLO refuses to surrender power, and that will lead to a civil war within the Palestinian camp. In Gaza, PLO people were thrown from the rooftops. Israel helped many of them out through Israeli territory to go to the West Bank. Hamas wins Gaza. And Gaza in the hands of Hamas since June of 2007, building a terror state right under our noses. I'll take a sidetrack because you still owe me 4 minutes from yesterday. No, I'm just kidding. But you need to understand that Israel is a small country. Yes, we are strong, prosperous, relatively we're a small country. And we are engaged with multiple enemies in different scenes and battlefields. And you have to be careful and picky, where do you put your money? You need to engage in a conventional warfare, a nuclear warfare. You need to fight against terror, and you need to fight against militias. Each one takes a different training, equipment, money. You simply need to decide which one is an existential threat and focus on this. For Israel, Iran is an existential threat. We thought that we can deal with Gaza at any moment. It's not a problem. All of our attention, all of it, went to Iran, to Lebanon, to Syria, not to the Palestinians. We still hoped that maybe the deal can work, because even today, officially on the table are the Oslo Accords. Nobody dared to officially cancel them. The Oslo Accords are still alive and kicking. It wasn't working from day one, but officially it's still on the table, a two-state solution. So Israel's attention was given to other areas, other threats, and not to the Palestinians and not to Gaza. And we paid. We paid dearly. That will be the last session to bring the whole story to conclusion. So please be back in about 10 minutes so we can carry on and speak about the war in Gaza and maybe some possibilities for the future in that ongoing conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. Thank you. The last session that we are going to have, I'm going to dedicate most of the time to the Gaza Strip. The West Bank is under Israeli control, so to speak, because of those events of the last 20 years or so. Although there is a Palestinian autonomy, we no longer respect their sovereignty. If we have a clear target to go after in Palestinian territory, we'll do that. And therefore, we are no longer cooperating in a way, and the West Bank will be a different story. So I prefer to focus now on Gaza, which is technically a Palestinian state. not a state with recognized borders that's a member in the UN, although the Palestinians have a seat in the UN and they are observers very close to the position of a state. Who are the Palestinians? Is it Hamas or the PLO? Not very clear. So even if you want today to negotiate and speak about the Palestinians as a nation, as one body of people, that's not the case. They are divided into groups, and these two groups are at war with one another. So who represents the Palestinians if you want to go and talk about a peaceful solution? Right now, nobody. The president of the Palestinians, Mahmoud Abbas, is the man who lost the elections. He represents nobody, and nobody will listen to him. But he is the moderate one. So the world wants to see Israel negotiating with the head of the Palestinian/national agenda, who cannot deliver, that nobody listens to, and he is a potential partner. You do understand the problem here. Let's say that we decide to negotiate, and we sign an agreement. Who on the Palestinian side is going to keep that agreement when the man who signed it is not representing them anymore? A little bit of a tricky situation that we are in, as you understand. So let's turn our eye to Gaza and speak a little bit about the Gaza Strip. Well, to answer what is the Gaza Strip, I did cover that 2 or 3 nights ago. It's a place that was created basically in the outcomes or the aftermath of the war of 1948-49. Gaza was a small town, numbered about 10,000 people or so. As the war in Israel started and many refugees started fleeing back home to Egypt, they were stopped by the Egyptian army. They sent them to live in this area, building temporary dwellings for them. Then UNRWA stepped in to build their camps. That's how the Gaza Strip was created. An attempt made by Egypt to stop the flow of refugees to go further down into Egypt. That's what made the Gaza Strip. There was no Gaza Strip before 1948. That's the story. Not a large area, very small basically. You see the data over there. 2.2 million people, well, go figure. There was never an official census in Gaza. We do know that 1949, the population, give or take, because the UN had a census, was about 200,000 people. In 70 years, population is 10 times more. That's suspicious. Usually populations don't grow that fast. So are they manipulating the numbers? We can't tell. But there is an interest for their side to manipulate the numbers because the more refugees they report, more money they get from the UN. So we do not know the exact figures, and since Hamas is the only one that provides this data for the last 15 years or so, can you trust it? Well, forgive me if I said that I don't trust a word that they're saying when it comes to casualties, when it comes to starvation in Gaza, etc. I'm not being cynical. There are people in Gaza who are hungry. It doesn't mean that Gaza doesn't have food. Plenty of food in Gaza. Question is who controls the food, who distributes the food, who gets the food, and what's the motivation behind it. Some more figures about Gaza. Until 1967, under Egypt, that was the lifespan. When Israel controlled the area, providing decent Medicare, building colleges, universities, which were supplementing the UNRWA's educational system, etc. Look at the lifespan now. Look at the world's average. Think about infant mortality. It was Israeli knowledge, doctors, nurses, building 38 hospitals in Gaza. 38. There are countries with millions of people around the world that don't have 38 hospitals. But for the Palestinians, every Arab nation felt responsible to do something for them. And one thing is to build a clinic or to build a hospital. Plenty of those. They are not the best in the world, as you understand. So whenever a local needs some decent Medicare, they have the right to come to Israel. We'll treat them. You show me another country in the world that has an enemy determined to kill them, and they will keep the borders open to provide medical treatment to people from Gaza to come to Israel. You cannot drive a car through. Well, today you can go through, but until October 2023, you can go to the border crossing, you present your papers. Volunteers, Israelis, will wait for you on the other side to drive you to the hospital. These volunteers, most of them lived in the Gaza envelope, and those people that they drove to hospitals led the attack to murder these very same people. Okay, because Israel also provides working permits. 25,000 people came daily from Gaza to work in Israel. And since the unemployment in Gaza is about 70%, and since most of the money that the world gave was used by Hamas to build an infrastructure of terror, those 25,000 kept basically sustained the whole of the Gaza Strip by working in Israel, making Israeli salaries, not Palestinian salaries in Gaza. We kept them alive. So there was a blockade, yes, we have the right to see what goes into our enemy's territory. The Egyptians refused to help in any way, in any manner, and the world expected Israel to do so, and we did. It was our electricity, it was our fuel, it was our everything that kept Gaza alive. We spoke about infant mortality, etc. Once again, the most third fast growing population in the world is the Gaza Strip. The numbers are there, although not officially, and these are UN data, not my crazy idea and not an opinion. During the war, as the war was going on, Israel also vaccinated for polio the children in Gaza. We did that during the war. Yes, the UN was involved. Yes, international organizations also helped. But Israel was the one that initiated, before it went out of control, to vaccinate the kids in Gaza for polio, etc. So just some of the things that, yes, we did for the Gazans. Okay? And again, most of the data is provided by the UN and not by Israeli sources. Ever since 2005, when Israel had the blockade around Gaza, the rumor started immediately, there was starvation in Gaza. How dare you block the area? How dare you stop all the food supplies? Gaza is hungry. 2005. 2010, we had enough, and we're asking some journalists from Egypt to come and visit Gaza and read some of their reports. That's an Egyptian, all right? Here's the newspaper, here's the date, easy to find the article. That's what happened in Gaza. Not starvation, and not famine, and not hunger. Here is another one, Rosal Yusuf, a very prominent newspaper, Egyptian once again. That was his impression about what happens in Gaza. So the Jewish state was not starving people in Gaza. The Jewish state was helping, doing something that the Egyptians refused to do, or any other Arab country for that matter. Read this one, for example. A report given recently. Remember, because the whole world said Gaza is a massive concentration camp. No, it wasn't. New hotels, nice beaches, life was good. But this will be a very easy accusation to make. We are starving because of the brutality of the Jewish state. Again, I'm not making up any of the documents, they're there. That's why it's so important for me to show you documents and not just opinions and ideas. These are easy to check and confirm. I ask you 1,000 times, don't just trust what I'm saying. You go and check. Meanwhile, all the money that was given to the Palestinians was used for this. We speak about 400 miles of tunnels. Every single bag of cement was not used to build a house. It was used to build tunnels. We thought that we are smart, Israel. Sometimes we are, sometimes we are not. And we thought that if every bag of cement has a little chip, we can follow it all the way to its final destination. And if the bag ended up in the house of Yusuf, Yusuf is going to build a house. Well, guess what happened? The minute the bag arrived to the house of Yusuf, a Hamas murderer shows up, takes out the device, and takes the bag of cement to build tunnels. So we are not even able to monitor, because the world said, just a minute, we have to make sure that we are paying for this cement, it's helping the Gazans. One way to do that, no. It was all tricks, and everything was used basically to build those. And some went under the Egyptian border. The Egyptians couldn't care less at first. So most of the things that came into Gaza, building this terror infrastructure, came from Egypt. But some came with Israel's permission. Some of you may be farmers. You do know that if you have a certain kind of fertilizers and you mix them together, that's how you make a bomb. Well, are we going to let them have those ingredients because some of them just need fertilizers? they grow cucumbers, we'll buy some produce from Gaza to support the economy. But if you send those chemicals inside, you don't know how they end up. It can be primitive, effective bombs. And we do know that that's what happened in most cases. So Gaza was receiving tons of money from the world. The locals did not see any improvement in their daily lives. Some of the rockets were made in Gaza. Some were smuggled in from Libya, from Egypt. These are more like standard North Koreans or Russian weapons. And Gaza was building a terror state under the sand dunes, under our noses. Our attention was going somewhere else. Our attention went basically to see what happens on the northern border that we thought is a more existential threat, totally ignoring what happens in Gaza. Because the idea was, if we create a situation that Gaza has something to lose, they enjoy some prosperity, they come to work in Israel. If they go to war against us, they're going to lose everything. So why should they? Not understanding that the mindset is, we don't care about making money or not. We are committed to your destruction, period. Let me show you this. I need to translate some of it. It's a kindergarten graduation ceremony in Gaza. The kids are 6, 7 years old. Starts nicely with all the usual costumes, etc. This one is dressed like a Jewish settler. All right? In the seconds, it tends to be a demonstration. These are Jewish settlers with rifles, and here is the Palestinian heroes are coming to kidnap them, to murder them, to butcher them. Here is the Palestinian hero that comes to get even with the Jewish settler. These are 6, 7 years old. The crowd is cheering. The parents are happy. Well, you tell me, how do you educate a generation to live in peace if that's part of the education? I won't even tell you what it says. You send your kids to have their kind of a graduation, the age of 5, 6, it's not the kind of show that you see, right? Think so. Knives. They're quite good, I have to say. Can't you say? Well, if that's the kind of education, under the auspice of UNRWA, the United Nations, the neutral body, etc., what do you expect when these kids will grow up, even before they grow up? That's what we are dealing with. Goes on and on and on. That's the kind of education that these kids are getting. The crowd is very happy. The crowd is mom and dad. All right? Here they carry bombs, roadside bombs, an Israeli vehicle, mortar fire in the age of 6. Isn't that great? They just kidnapped an Israeli soldier from the army post, etc., etc., etc. So that's what we are dealing with. I have to tell you, and I come before you with clean hands. In Israel, our education system is not like that. If I can give you an advice, if you want to know something about people, any people, try to get the textbooks in schools. That's all you need to know about the national mindset, how they educate the kids. That's education, again, supported by the United Nations in the Gaza area. Israel decided that what happens in Gaza can serve Israel's interests quite well. Prime Minister Netanyahu was in the opinion, legitimate policy I have to say, that if we are just supporting Hamas against the PLO, then the Palestinians will be divided, and as long as they are divided, Israel will not be under any pressure to negotiate because nobody represents the Palestinians. It was Israel that tried to convince Qatar, the villain of the whole story is Qatar, to send money into Gaza in order to support Hamas's officials, in order to support Hamas, we didn't call it terror, but to build a stronger Hamas. So the PLO will not be strong enough to take over Gaza and reunite the Palestinians, because then the world will have some demands from Israel. You wanted them to become one people, they are united now, negotiate, find an end to the situation. So Israel was the one that supported this whole thing. Hamas was called an asset, I kid you not. In press conferences, Netanyahu doesn't give press conferences anymore. He doesn't like inconvenient questions. But when he did, unlike your president, who is always talking to the public, our prime minister doesn't. He will speak to CNN, but not to the Israeli media. All right? He did not have a press conference in Hebrew for years, and he owes some answers to what happened recently. He doesn't. So when you call Hamas an asset, you do understand how wrong you are today in a retrospect. Back then, it seemed like a good policy. Divide and conquer, it's legit. The problem is it wasn't working because we did not understand that kind of mindset. We want Gaza to be flooded with money because then the Palestinians will have something to lose. That will guarantee the place will be quiet. There's not going to be a war because they will lose everything. It makes sense, right? But who cares about sense? So that became to be the mindset in Israel. And for a long time, Mr. Netanyahu is prime minister for 17 years. So, ministers come and go, chief of general staff and generals come and go, but the man behind the plan is there for 17 years. That was the policy, that was the mindset. Our main fear was that the Palestinians will dig tunnels underground into our communities in the Gaza envelope. We knew that the Egyptians are not going to stop that on their side. And what we could do to protect ourselves, guess what? Build fences. We are so great in building fences. So we built a fence, a state of the art. It is beautiful, it is massive, lots of sensors, lots of all kind of electronics on it. But if you drive a bulldozer against it, it won't stop the bulldozer. So the idea was that we are going to protect ourselves relatively cheap by building a fence because our attention and our technology is looking elsewhere. Iran and Lebanon and Syria, we simply ignored what happens under our very noses. And to make sure the system works, there was like a buffer zone, if you wish, between the Gaza side and the Israeli side. It was about 200 meters wide, and the plan was if anybody comes closer into that buffer zone, they are in danger. Israeli sharpshooters were ordered. Anybody who comes closer, you have permission to fire at them. Let me ask you this. You take your position, and you look into the other side, and the kid is coming, playing with his ball, and he kicks the ball, and the ball goes over that line. The child just goes to retrieve his ball. What would you do as an Israeli sniper? You're having your scope, you see the kid very clearly. Will you pull the trigger, yes or no? I'm asking you. No, right? Regardless of what were the orders, you're not going to shoot an innocent child that just played with the ball. And since you didn't, the following day, 5 kids show up. And they have 5 balls. And you don't shoot. A month later, a shepherd shows up and has about 1,000 sheep. And they roam all around, coming all the way to the fence. You just go to find your sheep, and we don't see what you do behind the fence. For example, you attach a TNT block, magnetic one, to the fence. We can see. You understand how it works. We were deceived. They did a great job, by the way. I'm complaining against us, not against them. They did a great job to deceive us, to take full advantage of our weakness. Our weakness is respecting human lives. If we had shot at a kid the first time, which we will in the future, there was no war in October 7th of 2023. It's brutal, it's cruel, it takes a whole different mindset. What are the alternatives? So one thing led to another, and we find ourselves in a situation which was not very pleasant. The Egyptians refused to help in any way. Most of the stuff came into Gaza through Egyptian tunnels. Everybody makes money out of it. The Egyptian officers are bribed. The people who live on the line, there was a town called Rafah. The line goes right through. You dig a tunnel from your kitchen. You drink a tunnel under the baby's crib in the baby's living room or the children's room. You cannot go and check every single room in a house because Rafah is a town divided by the border, and you can throw something from one side to the other. Egypt was supposed to stop that from their side. When Israel left Gaza in 2005, the Egyptians made a commitment, something they never kept. So Gaza is getting more and more equipped with all that ammunition, and we are deceived by Hamas. And let me show you how things were getting worse, basically. We find those massive rallies on the fences. and they burn tires, create a smoke screen, and through that smoke coming closer and closer to the fence, etc. And we did not understand something is cooking. Although I have to say, Israeli intelligence had the information. Israeli intelligence could see what happens in Gaza. It's a small place. We saw that they are training. We saw that there is equipment they should not have. We did not believe that they are capable. We did not know to what an extent they are prepared, ready, motivated, and the mindset, this Western mindset, they will have so much to lose. If they will attack us, no more working permits, no more food in Gaza. Why would they do that? I think that you know the answer. One thing leads to another, and we are going to face the war that will start in October 7th. It was the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles. Started early morning. I do want to show you a couple of statements first that were made by Palestinian Hamas leaders regarding Gaza. Give you a minute to read them, especially the one at the bottom. People asking, all those tunnels, why don't you let the people take shelter in the tunnels from the Israeli carpet bombing? There was not a single carpet bombing in Gaza. It's all targeted killing. We try to be very careful. Look at the one at the bottom. That's policy. We are going to sacrifice our children because politically it's worthwhile. That's not me. That's the head of Hamas. Because the whole world is so concerned about the kids for good reason. The kids are starving, the kids are hungry. We'll push them first to take fire. They are protecting the freedom fighters. Hamas freedom fighters are not protecting the kids. They send the kids ahead to protect them. That's the mindset. Here it is, official policy. It was 629 AD. As always, I was walking the dog. My phone rings. My daughter was working for Israeli TV. Dad, where are you at? I'm asking, why are you awake so early? And she says, go back home as quickly as you can. There are 3,000 rockets flying at your direction. That's how I knew that the war was about to begin. We live quite away from the Gaza area, but that was a shock that even today, when you think about the picture that we saw, and it was all broadcasted live. People were picturing their own death. Can you understand that? Your cell phone is working and shows the family how the family is being butchered by Hamas in their thousand communities. That never happened before. We didn't need reporters. Every cell phone was working. The amount of material is overwhelming. We still process it because it's so horrible. From more than 100 places along the gate or along the fence, bulldozers came, they detonated all those TNT blocks on the fences, and about 3,000 Hamas Nuhba, which is the elite forces, were breaking through, followed by another wave of 3,000 of just Hamas, not elite forces, followed by another wave of Gazans, people who live in Gaza, and suddenly they heard that the border is open, we're massacring the Jews, let's go and participate. You see the footage, you don't believe that. A man walking with crutches, had to be about 80 years old, coming from Gaza, leaping over the sand dunes into a house, grabs a rug, a carpet, and goes back home. It was unbelievable. We speak about more than 1,200 people that were massacred that day. People were killed in the houses, people were killed in the bags, women were raped, babies were thrown into ovens, and a music festival. People that came to celebrate, just to enjoy life, was also attacked. 400 people were killed, murdered, youngsters, unarmed. And 249 people were abducted and taken hostages into Gaza. Now I know that if I make a statement, people will be upset. Statement is, are there innocent people in Gaza? And the answer is, I'm sure there are. But think about the Israeli side. When you see a crowd of tens of thousands spitting and kicking and beating the naked, dead body of an Israeli girl, everybody cheering and happy. Who are the innocent people in Gaza? That's our impression. That's what we saw with our very eyes. Who goes into a house and kidnaps babies that were murdered later on? Little ones, red head, the whole world heard the story. And the question is, where was the Israeli army? That's a good question. That was a perfect storm. Something that we will never forget, because our attention was not in Gaza. Our mindset told us these people have a lot to lose. They will never dare. They want to. Maybe they are preparing. They are not capable. We underestimated their will, their zeal, their capability, and we paid. Are we learning something? Well, I hope we are learning something. I'm not sure. They went quite deeper into Israel's territory, went as deep as the town of Ofakim, about 12 miles or so, and there was nobody there to stop them. Because most of the army is deployed in the West Bank, and most of the attention, a holiday. The attention went to the Golan Heights, etc. People just, when the rumor spread, and everybody was part of it. You may live 100 miles away. If you have a handgun, you have a rifle, you get into your car, and you drive. And you try to save lives. And many Israelis lost their lives because they tried to save lives. It was not a military operation. You want to save lives, you jump into your car with your handgun, and you try to save lives. In most cases, you'll be dead. So it took some time, about 48 hours, for the Israeli forces to get together to go to a counterattack, to throw all of these back behind the line. About 1,500 were captured by Israel. Now they are interrogated. We have a problem because the legal system in the country doesn't have a specific regulation how to deal with it. How are you dealing with 1,500 murderers? In most cases, you did not see the murder. He murdered somebody, but there are no eyewitnesses. So what charges are you bringing against them? And you will tell me nuances, just kill those people. No. There has to be a legal way to do that. We did not press charges yet until against anybody. The legal system is still working on a way to do that legally because the whole world is watching. We don't want to be those savages that execute people with no trial. None of them paid the price yet. But we're able to collect all the pieces of the puzzle. We have a list of every name that participated. We go after them, we find them, we kill them. And Israeli media is even bothering to tell us this and this was killed in Gaza. He participated in the attack. He led the group in this town, the other one. He was responsible directly to the murder of this man. We will find all of them. It's a mission. It's a commandment that we took upon ourselves. All of them will be found. Let me show you how an Israeli community looks like after it was visited by those murderers of Hamas. Kibbutz Be'eri, maybe the kibbutz that was hit the hardest. I visited a few days later, and that's what I saw. Need the volume, please? It was hit the hardest from the murderous attack of Hamas. Until 2 weeks ago, happy families used to live here. This was a house with children playing out on the green grass. It was beautiful. It was a little paradise, and that's what was left of it now. I'm not sure what they were using, but it wasn't just simple fire. The fire was bigger, it was harder. Simply consumed whole neighborhoods. Sometimes people are in their safe rooms. In my country, since 1992, part of the building code, every house has, if not a bomb shelter, then a safe room. It's made of fortified concrete. We have one in our house, and that's where the family is supposed to take shelter. But the idea is if somebody fires at us, it will save our lives from a rocket. Not if somebody is in the house, not if somebody sets it on fire. Many people died in those safe rooms, burned to death. In one occasion, interesting, they called a group of archaeologists to go through a house. Now, just hear me out for a minute. Archaeologists are trained to see some things that other people cannot see. And if you excavated a house, even in Jerusalem, that once upon a time, days of the temple, somebody died, was burned, you can still identify the contours. You can tell if this was a human body lying there, although the body's gone. But you know how to identify the place. In one house in the Gaza area, a whole family just evaporated. The police couldn't find anything. Doctors, medics, they called the archaeologist. And sure enough, they said, see, that's a dead corpse. That's a dead body. They started sifting the ashes. And guess what was found? Bones and teeth. We had to go to that level because this fire consumed everything. And we had people that were missing for months after the attack. It took time to identify all of them. And meanwhile, the Israeli army got together to go to a counterattack. Now this is horrific when you think about it. It would be a miracle, maybe the biggest in our lifetime, that we were able, and we have to thank President Trump, among other people, to bring all of them back home. 48 were murdered while they were held captives, but we don't have a single Israeli in the hands of Hamas in Gaza anymore. And that was the most painful issue to deal with. Just think about those families and think about the national trauma, and we are living a trauma even now. It will take time to recover. Now think about few Holocaust survivors that were taken hostages. People that survived the Holocaust, hiding from the Nazis, sometimes in closets in homes, found themselves in the same situation, in a sovereign Jewish state. They maybe were the most disappointed ones. We survived the Holocaust. We came to build a country. The country is strong, protecting us, and here we find ourselves in the same situation. Nazis are going through the house, looking for us once again. It was a trauma on so many levels, it will be very hard to digest. As a society, as individuals, it's an open wound. It will not be healed for a long time. But it gives you some motivation. Look at the kids, all right? Most of them. Ariel Bibas, second one from the left, was murdered. His brother Kfir, third one on the second row from the left. Kfir was murdered. Their mother Shiri Bibas, who is not in the picture. 48 of those that were taken alive were murdered. I have to say that maybe some of them by friendly fire is possible. But the Israeli retaliation was limited because we suspected that they keep them in some locations, and we were very careful not to go into those places, not to shell them, not to rocket them, not to kill our own people. 30% of Gaza were not even touched by the Israeli army. 30% of Gaza were not officially attacked because that's where they kept them. So it was, in a way, fighting with one hand behind your back. But these lives are important. Still an open wound that affects every life in the country even today. And once again, Gaza, under Hamas, the tunnels. Now look at the sizes of those tunnels. Some of them you can drive a car through. Okay, 400 miles? That's more than the London Underground or the Tube. Our retaliation was harsh. Gaza is in ruins almost completely. But let me give you a description. Good intelligence, you don't know where some targets are at. You know that this neighborhood is housing headquarters, it's housing ammunition, etc. You want to take it out. Two options. Number one, bomb the place. But then you can kill a lot of civilians who are not really involved. Option number two, tell them to leave because you're coming. You show me one army in the world who is going to warn the enemy, losing the element of surprise, evacuate because we are coming. You won't find it. By the way, we prepared shelters for you. You will be fed. You will be well treated just for the time being. And then you can go back home. Show me an army in the world that behaves like that. You won't find it. By the way, when Israel makes such a statement, clear the neighborhood, what do you think will be the accusation against Israel? Ethnic cleansing, right? That's ethnic cleansing. No, it's saving lives. Israel did not carpet bomb Gaza. That was easy. Let's just wipe out the whole thing. We didn't. We sent our troops in. We lost 1,000 casualties. You show me when a country committed genocide while losing 1,000 soldiers. How many Nazi Gestapos were killed by eliminating 6 million Jews? Maybe a handful because of headaches and other diseases? It's a battle, for goodness sake. And you try to save lives. We don't want the world to like us. We don't want to kill innocent civilians because it doesn't fit our moral values. But we have a good reason to go into Gaza, try to go after every single terrorist, and we will. So Gaza pays a price. Gaza pays a real dear price. But then, once again, you're asking who are the innocent people in Gaza? That will be very hard to tell. When you see the behavior, do you know that each time Jews were killed, even today, they are giving out sweets in the streets of Arab cities around the world. When Jews are being murdered, Muslims will give out sweets. What do you think happened in 9/11, 2001, in the Palestinian towns in the West Bank? It was a day of celebration. Yeah? So, when you speak about destruction, it's quite massive. And let's say that the neighborhood was cleared, and a battalion goes inside to go room by room, to go door by door. You have to check everything because you do not know where is the next shaft that goes down to the tunnel system. But let's say that you find a shaft in a building. Is that a legitimate target to take out? I'm asking you. Just the building, there's nobody there. You find in a school, in a classroom, a pile of AK-47s and plenty of RPGs. Is this a legitimate target to take, yes or no? You go into a mosque and you find a lot of weapons. Is that a legitimate target? Some will say no, just take the weapons, and this is just an innocent mosque. Possible. But what if a battalion goes inside and somebody fires at you from a nearby house? Is the house a legitimate target to attack? Thank you. And since Gaza was prepared to be a battlefield, and every house was booby-trapped, every house is a legitimate target. End result was devastation. Gaza is devastated almost completely, and the job is not done yet. There's kind of a ceasefire for half a year now. We will not stop. It will take time. It will take efforts and casualties. We'll go from room to room, from house to house. We don't have an alternative. Because October 7th was a lesson we will never forget. And we are determined this will not happen again. It can happen again because right now for 6 months, Hamas is under no attack, no threats. They are rebuilding their forces. They were supposed to disarm 2 months ago. Who will see to that? Who is going to force them to disarm? And why would they? There's no pressure. The whole world is praising Hamas in Gaza. Free Gaza, starvation in Gaza. So why would they? All the pressure is on Israel. The whole world understands that radical Islam is a danger. Nobody is willing to fight against it except one country, State of Israel. So here's some frustration in my voice for a good reason. Just try to give you an idea why the damage is so massive. If you place a bomb under the asphalt and then you pave the road once again to detonate it when an Israeli vehicle goes by, you just destroy the street. You did it, not Israel. You know that the columns are going to go through this road. You're placing bombs inside the houses on both sides. When the vehicle goes by, you detonate the bombs. You destroy your house. Urban warfare, the most impossible one to fight. Not pleasant. 2,000 rockets launched by Hamas fell in Gaza. They caused some damage, right? So you cannot really blame Israel, just Israel, for all the damage in the Gaza Strip. It's a battlefield. And the Gazans are paying the price. Let's have a word about the casualties in Gaza, because this is in particular irritating. Keep in mind that all the data is given by Hamas's health bureau, something like that. Never ever reported even once that a casualty was a Hamas member. Not even once. So about 70,000 people died, maybe more. It's a tragedy. These are human lives. Hamas did not admit that not even one of them was a member of Hamas. So the question was, if there is such a mighty army called Hamas, where were they? They were supposed to protect the people, right? So officially, but we have the list. We have the names. We watch the funerals. We have eyes in the sky constantly. We know, give or take, about 50% of the casualties in Gaza, and many others are still buried under the ruins. The numbers are bigger, I'm sorry to say. But we could establish that at least 40 to 50% of the casualties are indeed members of Hamas. Did you know that they don't wear uniforms when they go to battle? It's a violation of the Geneva Convention. They don't wear uniforms. And when somebody dies, the first thing they do, they take the rifle and they take the vest off him, and by the time you come to write him down, it's a civilian. So, it's hard to tell. Let me give you a list of casualties, so to speak, in warfare in the last, let's say, half a century. Look at the numbers over there. Was anybody accusing France for committing genocide in Algeria? These guys killed 1.5 million, most of them civilians. Did anybody call Charles de Gaulle committing genocide? I don't think so. In none of these cases, I'm sorry for the small letters, none of them, somebody was accused for genocide. Such an easy accusation. Oh, the Jews, of course, committing genocide. Just an example, I'm sorry for the small letters over there, but we need to understand that there is a certain understanding around the world, and it's gross and brutal, unpleasant to speak about it. What will be legit in warfare? The percentage or the ratio of combatants and non-involved, so to speak. Well, what is accepted in the world, and that's not international law, that's an understanding among governments and armies, that the ratio of 4-1 is reasonable. If every 4 civilians die when you try to go after one combatant, that's a decent price to pay. I'm sorry to say it like that. We speak about human lives, but it's not a pleasant situation. In Gaza, it's about 1-1. Let me make a statement. Please check me out. The lowest rate of non-involved in modern warfare is in Gaza. You know what was the rate in Mosul, in Iraq? 9-1. Did anybody accuse the US of A or other militias for genocide? No. Just when it comes to the Jewish state, accusations that's so easy to throw there, you don't have to prove anything. Everybody knows that the Jews commit genocide. It becomes to be square one. Let's start talking knowing that as a fact. No, there was no genocide in Gaza. There was a battle. The good guys won, so to speak. We lost more than 1,000 soldiers. When you commit genocide, you don't lose that many soldiers. Going from door to door, from house to house, trying to save lives. We'll speak about starvation in just a minute. Well, that was I was trying kind of to explain. Let's speak about humanitarian aid to Gaza. Well, I think that all of you saw the footage, and more than once, the whole world was there to supply food to Gaza. Israel was supplying food to Gaza. The problem is that the United Nations, UNRWA, was responsible for all of it. And when UNRWA is reporting how many trucks are going in, UNRWA reports only UNRWA trucks. When most of the humanitarian aid was given by non-UNRWA trucks. We speak about helicopters parachuting down stuff. The United Emirates and Jordan and France, everybody was helping Gaza. All that is not included in the official numbers, because the official numbers, published by Hamas, is only what UNRWA sees to go through. Only about 15 to 20% of really goes into Gaza. It doesn't mean that Gazans are not hungry. People in Gaza are hungry. Because as soon those trucks are going through the checkpoint into Gaza, guess what happens? Hamas people show up, seize the trucks, and drive them to the warehouses of Hamas. I'll show you some footage in just a minute. So the food supply is plenty. The warehouses are full. Well, who distributes the food? In what way? Who has priority? Who is making money out of it? If you control the food, you control Gaza. And Israel tried, with the US by the way, to create an alternative system. We are going to create another body, and we are going to deliver food packages. Everybody has to come to our center to collect a food package. The whole world was upset. No, UNRWA should do that. And Israel somehow capitulated. Okay, let UNRWA do that. As long as you control the food, you control Gaza. And Hamas controls the food. And again, it's quite mind-blowing because it's so obvious. It's so pathetic, right in your face. And people try to tell stories. No, that wasn't Hamas. There was an incident in Syria when the new regime in Syria was butchering the Druze and the Alawites, and you saw this amazing, horrible atrocities. Everybody carries a camera today. You saw how people shoot people in. They had the whole world saw them. Did you see one incident of an Israeli soldier shooting an innocent civilian? Just one. You won't. It's not because there are no cameras around, because it didn't happen. Did you see Gazan kids who are really hungry? We know how hungry kids look like. We do know, right, unfortunately. Big bellies. The 5 pictures are published were children, there's 5, children that had a physical condition. And because of that, we sent them out to Italy to get treatment. All you saw were kids with big spoons and knives and pots banging on that. They didn't look that hungry, if you ask me. It's all staging everything, because it's clear the Jews are so brutal, they're going to starve Gaza to death. No, people are not starving to death in Gaza, although not everybody is satisfied in Gaza. Yes, there are hungry people in Gaza. I do want to show you a clip. It takes about 6 minutes, but I think that you should see that, because it can explain better than I can the whole dynamic behind the way things are reported from Gaza, and we'll bring that to conclusions. I'm going to collect the 4 minutes today. Maybe we just run it through.
On Sunday, the world awoke to the news of another massacre in Gaza, perpetrated by Israel.
31 Palestinians were killed as they were trying to get to a humanitarian aid site in southern Gaza. And according to eyewitnesses on the ground, doctors at local hospitals, as well as the Palestinian Ministry of Health, Israeli gunfire was responsible for these deaths.
Hamas-affiliated voices on social media immediately claimed that Israel had perpetrated a massacre, that this was some kind of trap to lure Palestinians to their death. And international media ran with that story more or less without any verification.
The problem is, the massacre the media describes never happened. The IDF issued the initial statement denying the report.
I urge you not to believe every rumor spread by Hamas.
They acknowledged firing warning shots to ward off potential thieves, but denied firing on Gazans at or near the distribution site. Then, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, Israel and US-backed organization managing aid distribution, released security footage from the aid site in question at the time of alleged massacre,
which showed not only that the Israelis had not done this, but that there was no gunfire at the site at all that could be determined.
At the same time, the IDF released drone footage from what they claimed to be a different aid distribution site that showed masked gunmen shooting into the crowd of people as they tried to collect humanitarian aid. Gazans on the ground that we spoke to claimed the violence was provoked and perpetrated by Hamas.
But I think that you understand the picture by now. Let me just give that. I want to show you Caroline Levitt for just a minute and her understanding.
Popular in Israel in order to lure Palestinians into a trap so that they could kill them 30 at a time in front of cameras where the international community would see them and condemn them for it. It just makes no sense.
By Sunday evening, media publications began quietly updating their stories, sometimes without issuing corrections. By Tuesday, those stories were gone altogether.
They wrote, Israeli tank kills 26, Israeli tank kills 21, Israeli gunfire kills 31, Red Cross says 21 people were killed in an aid incident, and then, oh wait, they had to correct and take down their entire story, saying we reviewed the footage and couldn't find any evidence of anything.
This has been
You don't understand how it works. Number one, you have the story out there. And then you may apologize, but whoever heard the apology? What really gets cemented in the brain of the whole world is the initial report. And it happens almost every day. Almost every day. Look at this data with your permission. That will be the amount of aid that goes into Gaza. And that's the UN admitting that most of it is kidnapped, hijacked, stolen by Hamas. That's a UN document. Not mine. In July, 94% of the trucks never made it to the markets. They ended up in the warehouses of Hamas. That's why Gazans are hungry, not because of Israel. Plenty of food. They're hungry because Hamas has a certain interest. Let's speak about the day after in Gaza. And I wish I had some good kind of insights to give you. Unfortunately, I don't. But President Trump is fully involved in what happened in Gaza. Right now, the world is busy with Iran, but there was an agreement signed. There was a ceasefire agreement. Hamas agreed that they should disarm, which is not going to happen. Hamas agreed to release all the hostages in 48 hours, took 3 weeks until the last one was freed, or the bones of the last one were given back to Israel. Hamas is getting stronger by the hour because they control the food, they control the money. It's easy to recruit and train people if you pay them enough. They may lost 30,000 in the war, they have them back in their ranks. Less experienced, maybe not that well trained, they lost their capacity to manufacture rockets and motors, etc. But Hamas is very much alive and kicking. And if you want to end that story, it will involve another war, and accusations, and Israel is starving them, etc., etc., etc. I do want to show you where we are standing right now, and that will be the end of this whole seminar. Right now, that's the case. Israel occupies about 53% from the Gaza area. Hamas is squeezed into a tiny area, basically. Egypt is disconnected from Hamas's territory on purpose, so they cannot bring stuff under the tunnels, through the tunnels under the border. And if we freeze the situation, that's what it looks like right now. Israel, respecting the ceasefire, are only going after Hamas in this limited area when there is a reason. There is a central command by the town of Kiryat Gat in Israel. In that command room, there are American officers, British officers from NATO, French officers. We kicked out the Spaniards because they are the most unpleasant country to Israel right now. We said, just go back home. And every operation Israel conducts is with the approval of the Americans and the British and the French and the Italians. I wish we had a free hand, but we made that commitment. And therefore, right now, not much happens along the Israel-Gaza border. The West Bank, that's another story. I'm sorry, no time to speak about it right now. And that will bring our long journey of 8 hours to some kind of an end. And if I can summarize that with your permission in a minute. Lots of information, not easy to digest, very unpleasant to speak about that. I think that the facts speak for themselves. And I urge you to go and check. That's why I made it as boring as I could by showing you documents. When you read documents of the British Empire, of the League of Nations, of the UN, you read documents written by Arabs describing what they did, you can easily say, that's not propaganda. These are the facts. You have better facts? Please, please show them. I'm more than happy to leave my email here. I can be a friend on Facebook, and please enlighten me if you have the facts, because most people don't care about the facts. So the few times that I have a chance, and with the pleasure, to debate with people who are, let's say, anti-Israelis, it's the most easiest one for me to win. All I have to say is, give me an example. Genocide, give me an example. Colonialism, give me an example. You stole land from the Arabs. An example, please? They can, because it never happened. Thank you so much. It was a long week. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because it's an opportunity, because most time people are not willing to listen. They call you names, we start fighting. So I'm glad for the opportunity to be able to develop the whole story. And if you think that you find it interesting, please do your own studies. Please share that with friends, maybe kids. I know that the children, the young generation, is the biggest challenge now, because they're not exposed to all of this. They don't care. My friend is calling me to go to a rally. We're going to blame the Jews. Why not? We go hang out and go to drink something later on. They don't care. Which means that you have a problem with your next generation, as well as we have a problem and the whole world. You want to live in a lie? Be my guest. We'll stick to the truth. Israel is always winning. When God is with you, who can be against you? Thank you.
You owe me 5 minutes. Thank you, Ronnie. Such a blessing. Just want to mention that we are still planning on going to Israel October 8th through 20. And it's interesting because many people say, well, are the airlines flying? Well, yeah, the airlines are scheduled to start in September. I'm pretty sure that the problem with Iran and the rest are going to be ended soon because there's an election coming up in November, and I'm pretty sure that President Trump is determined to have things settled out. So we're doing the trip a little bit different this time. We're focusing just on the New Testament stories, basically the footsteps of Jesus, and it's also going to be a slower tour. We're going to have a day of rest on the front end in Tel Aviv so people can recover from the flight. We're going to have one at the end, and part of the thing we've understood is a lot of us, I mean, when I started doing this in my 30s, we had, I think Ronny told me one time, we visited 42 sites, and he was impressed. Obviously, most of us move slower. Many of us like to take a slower pace, so it's going to be a much slower paced trip. But we have limited space. Believe it or not, Nir says that they are booked up in hotels from October on into, I don't know when they're going to open up again, but basically all these people are booking flights because they're waiting, hotels and trips because they're waiting for the war to end, and so there's going to be this flood of people. So we have some our reservations are in, holding rooms and everything else like that, but it's going to be fairly limited on how many people. I think we're only about 20 people can go on this trip. So if you're interested, and the other thing that we're doing a little bit differently this time is that we're encouraging people to make their own flight arrangements, and particularly we're encouraging them if they can go from Fly El Al, because they can go direct from Los Angeles to Tel Aviv in about 13 hours, as opposed to going through Europe. And last time, I think it took, coming back, Drew told me something like 35 hours. We had remember the TSA shut down and all that stuff, so they got stuck in Germany for about 11, 12 hours before they could. Anyway, but thankfully, there's no problems with no, never mind. But those are some things different. So the cost for the trip is basically the land, transportation, food, hotel, and everything is about just a little under $4,500. And then we're encouraging people, although we will help you out if you have trouble doing that, making their own flight arrangements over. So just thought I'd throw that out there in case you're interested. The other thing is Ronny is in mid-trip, and you're heading for where to next? Is it South Carolina? So anyway, they're bouncing around the United States, doing the same thing in different places. But we pray that basically God will bless your efforts. I just would say to you, Ronny, the information you've shared for us has been invaluable, and we are informed, and we are motivated to really have other people understand the evil tragedy of this whole history. And at the same time, it's one of those amazing things that, as I was doing some shows with Ron today, we were recording, and the thing we were talking about is how incredibly unlikely, I mean unrealistic, it's just an anomaly of such a large size that Israel should even exist. And you realize that God has a plan for the nation of Israel in the end times, and he's going to do it. And so when we talk about the victories, even this against Iran, and everybody goes, wow, there's so great, amazing technology and so forth, which is all true, but there's a divine hand that is giving them an advantage. And we were talking about this today, about just when Ronny was talking about the Europeans' betrayal and all this stuff. And I thought to myself as he was saying this, God says, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And it's just incredible that the British Empire, which was the largest empire in the world, the sun never set on the British Empire, and look at them today. I mean, they are all of those Western European countries that turned their back on the Holocaust and have resisted God's efforts to bring his people back in the land, are now finding themselves not only diminished, but the very people they supported against Israel have migrated into their countries and are beginning to bring that same judgment upon them. You reap what you sow. It's just an amazing thing. And I sit back and go, God, you are an incredible, amazing God who does exceedingly above and beyond anything that we could think or exist. And we just believe that we're going to continue to see God do some amazing things in these last days. Let's pray. No, I think I want to talk some more. No. Father God, in the name of Jesus, we just pray your blessing upon the land of Israel. We pray a blessing upon Ronnie and Tali and their family. We pray for all of our friends, Nir and Hannah, and all those, Amit, and the other people that we've befriended. And we pray, God, that there would be peace upon them. We pray that you'd bring healing into the hearts and the minds of so many who have suffered so much and gone through so much tragedy. And that, God, that you would just manifest your love for your people in just profound and powerful ways. We trust you for this, Lord. We ask it in Jesus' holy name. Amen. Thank you again for coming out all of these nights. And God bless you and go in his grace.